My name's Adam Melnyk. I'm the owner of Seeing the Lead and a leadership coach. And today I'm going to teach you all about why your performance reviews are essentially bullshit. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I hate performance reviews. I despise the modern performance review. And that's because nobody seems to understand why we should be doing it. And that is so frustrating. Currently, in its current form and iteration, I see the modern performance review more like a horse and pony show. It's where managers feel like they have to do them and they're trying to get the most out of their employees, while their employees despise and hate them and are trying to set goals that require the least amount of effort, but still impress their manager enough that they're not going to get fired or get hassled. The modern performance review is a bureaucratic bullshit nightmare. And the frustrating part is when I talk to my clients and I ask them, okay, you are spending hours doing these performance reviews. Why are you doing them? The answer I get is because it's tied to my pay. That's not good enough. Like if you're going to be spending, I don't know, something like 12 to 16 hours every year on performance review, just reviews, you should understand why you're doing them. And so when we look at the origins of the performance review, why we started doing them in the first place dates all the way back to World War I. Its whole shtick was trying to understand in a war that we are losing soldiers at an incredible rate. It helps us identify who we should be promoting, who we need to get rid of, and who's just maintaining. That's its whole goal. If you're getting ready for war and or in a conflict, you're just going to lose soldiers. We need to understand before people get to the meat grinder who we should be promoting. And that mentality has come into the corporate world. A performance review, if done well, will help you identify your star players, your good performers. These are people that we need to recognize. These are people that we could potentially promote. These are people that we should be rewarding. It'll help us identify who's just kind of maintaining their job. In which case, these are people that we just let them maintain their job. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are. But we're not going to promote them. But it can also help us understand who our poor performers are, which could either indicate that we need to put more time and energy into them to help lift them up to become positive performers or good performers, or just help them kind of move along. And then the second thing, beyond just identifying these three people, is a good performance review helps us identify talent internally to develop. When we look at history, when I see businesses are often fighting between two sides. There's too many workers in the job market and there's not enough workers in the job market. When there's not enough workers in the job market, which is going to be coming up in the next decade, what we start seeing is that businesses start looking internally to develop the talent. They start looking at, okay, who in our organization already has the abilities or the aptitude to move up in leadership, and how do we develop that talent? And that's where a performance review comes in. It helps you say, awesome, John's really amazing at this. He's a high performer. He's really good at this. He would make for an excellent candidate to move up the chain of command in promoting. What I see right now, however, is we as a society are too focused on this idea that we have too many workers and that there's always going to be somebody to replace whoever leaves. And that's problematic. And this is why when we look at organizations, they're hiring laterally. So this is why they're hiring people from outside the organization, fresh out of school, fresh out of college, into the organization, or from other organizations into yours. They don't need to develop the talent because there's an abundance of people within our society. Unfortunately, when we look at how our society is going, that's not going to be the case. Birth rates are dropping across the Western Hemisphere. Canada, we just don't have the stable population right now to support all the people that are getting old. This is how it is. We have too many old people and not enough young people. This is one of the many reasons why we opened up our borders and allowed for such massive amounts of immigration, because the domestic population is just not having the children, which means that in the next decade to 2 decades, we are going to be having a labor shortage. This is important, which means that when we look at performance reviews, they're supposed to be helping you identify within your organization your key performers that you should be promoting up the chain of command. Right now, however, people don't even understand how the performance reviews are used. So what they're doing is, one, when I see them pulling employees in for a review, they're often weakness focused. They're not there to identify amazing performers or your star players. They're not there to reward these star players. They're not there to really do anything more than just fill a bureaucratic need. which is why they become this horse and pony show. In the most egregious examples of this, I see performance reviews usually used as just punishment tools because of just incompetent management. So managers, as opposed to addressing problems when they happen, are waiting for annual performance reviews to sit down the other person and say, awesome, let me tell you how much of a screw up you are. And the other person sitting there going, that happened like 6 months to a year ago, and I'm just hearing about this now? No, that's not how you do it. In fact, if anything, that's going to build resentment in the other person, which is the big question of why do we even bother with performance reviews if they aren't being used appropriately, if everybody hates them, if they're just so demoralizing. Why do we do it? The first one is personal biases. Everyone says, yeah, we do performance reviews, so I have to keep doing performance reviews. The second reason is people say that performance reviews allow you to align the employee's goal with the business's goals, which in theory is true. However, when you look at most businesses within our current economic environment, their goals are changing every other day. They change goals like you change shirts. And it's so frustrating to watch because the goal that they set for these employees a year ago is out of date 6 months later, let alone next year. It's so frustrating. But in theory, it allows you to align the goals. In reality, it doesn't quite work. Next one is it gives HR some wiggle room around discrimination. What I mean by that is by doing these performance reviews, they can use these performance reviews as justifications to let somebody go or to promote them up the chain of command. And they say, listen, this wasn't a discriminatory process. This was a process that was non-biased, that was cold and calculated, and this is why we're doing the thing that we're doing. In reality, however, that's not true because managers and leaders are very biased people, and if they don't like you, they'll intentionally fudge your performance review and just screw you over. And then there's the idea that ultimately performance reviews help improve poor performers, which is just not true. And what I mean by that is leadership often feels like, oh, if there's a poor performer, a performance review is a great way to provide feedback to them, to help them shape up. No, it's not. If somebody's screwing up, as a leader, you should be in there correcting them, helping them out, providing feedback in the moment. You honestly should not be waiting for an entire year before you provide that feedback. That is not what you do. And so these are really the reasons why people use to justify these performance reviews. But the truth is, they're all bullshit. If you would like to do a review that is truly helpful, this is what you're going to do. Step one, as a manager, you should always be providing feedback in the moment. You should be having informal conversations with your team constantly, and you should be giving them that feedback. If they're screwing up, you should be helping them figure out how not to screw up. If they're doing a good job, you should be rewarding that. You should be providing that feedback now, not 6 months to a year from now. The next thing is you should be doing check-ins anytime a project is completed. Project's done, you check in with the team. What went well, what didn't go well, let's talk about it. Again, we're providing feedback in the moment. The third thing, we should always be coming from a strength-based approach, which is talking about what they're good at, what the things that make them amazing, not talking about how much of a screw up they are. The amount of managers, the amount of leaders that I've worked with that talk about how awful human beings are is just mind-boggling. If you genuinely think that your team is this incompetent, why are you there? Why do you have this team? Seriously, move on. And then 4, we got to provide the incentives to these people. You want your high performers to stay high performers. You need to be providing incentives to help them keep performing. This person that I worked with busted their butt off. They went above and beyond for the organization. And then management's like, good job. And the guy's like, well, all I got is a good job and a pat on the back. I'm not interested. And then they walked. No wonder they walked. No wonder you taught them that going above and beyond doesn't do anything for them. You didn't reward them appropriately. So when we look at it, you should be rewarding these people. You should be giving them, to be honest, everyone should be getting annual pay raises, but you should be giving them pay raise, or you should be providing them some monetary value beyond just like, here's your paycheck. But when we look at it, when we do these reviews, 1, first and foremost, feedback should always be happening in the moment. 2, make sure any feedback is all strength-based. Don't go weakness based. 3, check in at the end of each project. 4, make sure that we're actually rewarding our high performers. If you have to do a performance review because of management and the bureaucratic BS, that's usually more of a time to sit down with individuals. And again, if they're a strong performer, then we're going to reward them in this performance review. Say, hey, this is all the things we noticed. This is what we want to do. But more importantly, what I usually see is this is a personal development conversation in these performance reviews. The goals are kind of all bullshit. Nobody cares about them. You shouldn't be making annual goals within organizations because, again, the goals just change too frequently. However, when you're doing a performance review, you should be talking more about their personal development. How can we help the individual get to the next level? And these are great opportunities if you do have poor performers or people that are kind of checked out of the company or organization to start reconnecting with them and building that trust back up again, which is, again, why you should never be sitting them down and saying, hey, let me tell you how much of a screw up you are. Because if you are, those people that are already checked out are just going to get further checked out. And that is not what we want. Keep it strength-based, keep the feedback to a minimum, keep it more towards a personal development conversation. And then once you're outside and working with them, that's where we do the feedback in the moment, have those informal conversations. That's what we prefer to do. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And if you're struggling with leadership or just struggling to get your life on track, feel free to reach out to myself and join my free 4-week coaching program, where we'll help identify your goals, where you want to go, and break it down to steps to help move you forward. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.